I felt like I was gonna have to fight for my life. He grabbed the hammer, he said, "See this hammer?" And we said, "Yeah," and he was like, "This is the hammer that I'm your mom and your stepdad and your brother with." And he was like, "They're not alive and you're never gonna see them again."
Welcome guys, today I'll be speaking about the diary of Joseph Edward Duncan III. Before I get into this video, I just want to thank you guys for all the support on my videos lately. I really do appreciate it. I'm sorry this video took so long to go out. It took a really long time to make, and also I was kind of sick, so and I still am, if you can hear. I'm sorry about that. But now I'm back and with another video, so I hope you guys enjoy. Joseph Edward Duncan III was an American serial killer born on the 25th of February 1963. He was 5 to 8 people, 3 to 16 people, 1 to 7 people, attempted to kill 1 person and stalked 1 to 3 people. Duncan was on death row following the 2005 murder of members of the family of the Groene family. In addition to the death sentence, he was also serving 11 consecutive life sentences without parole for the murder of Anthony Martinez. Duncan died on the 28th of March 2021 due to a terminal brain tumor. Duncan was born in North Carolina. Because Duncan's father was in the army, the family relocated many times up until Duncan was around 12 years old. After being arrested in 1980, Duncan claimed to have been abused, but his younger brother opposed that claim. Duncan's father divorced in 1983. Duncan gained a stepfamily when his father remarried. He did not graduate high school. Duncan told an investigator that he was using marijuana daily by the time he got to high school, and he had tried other drugs like LSD, amphetamines, and Valium. Now we get on to his criminal timeline, which is just his crimes in order. At a psychiatric hospital, Duncan confessed to have allegedly performed incestuous acts on female relatives when he was 8. At age 12, Duncan forced a 5-year-old boy to perform oral sex on him. At 15, he did the same to a 9-year-old boy at gunpoint. At 16, he was arrested for driving with a stolen car. He was then sent to Jesse Dislin Boys Ranch in Tacoma, where he told a therapist that he'd awarded 13 young boys. He tied some of them and committed these heinous acts upon them. Duncan was then arrested for breaking into a neighbor's house, stealing and awarding a 14-year-old boy at gunpoint. That appears to be the first time Duncan was charged with a crime. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison for this, but got out only 14 years later on parole. 2 years later, Duncan was arrested for the use of marijuana. He was released on parole a few weeks later. In 2005, Duncan was arrested for the July 3, 2004 murder of 2 boys at a playground, but was charged with skipping bail and disappearing. Now onto the Groene family. On the 16th of May 2005, authorities discovered the bodies of 40-year-old Brenda Groene, a 37-year-old boyfriend Mark McKenzie, and Brenda's 13-year-old son Slade Groene in their home in Idaho. Autopsies determined that the victims had blunt trauma to the head. The victims had been bound. Brenda's 2 other children, 9-year-old Dylan Groene and 8-year-old Shasta Groene, were missing. 7 weeks later, at around 1:30 a.m., Shasta was spotted at a restaurant along with an unknown man, who was later identified as Duncan. Restaurant staff and customers recognized Shasta from media reports, called the police and stopped Duncan from exiting the restaurant. Police arrived at the restaurant and arrested Duncan on charges and on his outstanding warrant. Shasta was then taken to Kootenai Medical Center for medical treatment and to be reunited with her father. However, authorities had little hope of finding Dylan, Brenda's 9-year-old son, alive. On the 4th of July 2005, authorities found human remains at a makeshift campsite near Montana. The remains were sent for DNA testing and were later identified as Dylan. Duncan had shot Dylan in the head at point-blank range. So what exactly happened in these? Shasta's mother woke her and her brother Dylan up and told them that someone was in their house. They then went to the living room to see Duncan standing there wearing black gloves and holding a gun. Duncan tied her mother's boyfriend, and her older brother Slade's hands with zip ties. Duncan placed Shasta and Dylan outside while he met the 3 inside the house.
He had actually come into the room and woke us up and said that there's a man here that doesn't want us to be here. I remember hearing my mom, like she went to go yell, but didn't have the time to.
Both children were taken to Duncan's car to other locations, where they were at a campsite. Duncan told the children that he had their family members with a hammer. Upon hearing this, Shasta reported crying a lot.
He grabbed the hammer, he said, "See this hammer?" And we said, "Yeah," and he was like, "This is the hammer that I'm your mom and your stepdad and your brother with." And he was like, "They're not alive and you're never gonna see them again."
Did you just cry?
Yes, I cried a lot.
He then fired his shotgun, which hit Dylan in the stomach. As Dylan begged Duncan not to shoot him, Duncan reloaded his shotgun and shot the boy in the head, Dylan instantly. Duncan cried and told Shasta that he only shot Dylan because he would have been more pain if he was alive.
I was just frozen, like, I didn't know what to do, and Joseph Duncan walked up to him with the gun, and he was like, "No, please don't." And I just didn't even know what to do. I remember, like, I think for about a week I just didn't talk. I couldn't say anything. I was just frozen.
Duncan then asked Shasta how she would like to die, either by strangulation or by being. She chose to be strangulated, and Duncan proceeded to tie a rope around her neck and tighten it, causing Shasta to start suffocating. She was able to gather enough breath to say, "Please don't, Jet." And Jet is Duncan's nickname. As we'll see later in his diary, he refers to himself as Jet a lot. After Shasta had called him Jet, Duncan softened and started crying. He said, "I can't do this." Duncan asked Shasta if she would like to meet his mom, to which she said yes. They drove back towards home.
I remember just holding on to hope, but still feeling like there wasn't going to be any.
But stopped on the way to restaurant Daddy's, where Shasta would be rescued.
She didn't speak without his permission. Something about the dynamic between the two, it set the hairs on the back of your neck.
I've got a little girl here with a tall gentleman, and she looks so much like this Shasta. Okay, are they still in the building? And we're not sure, you know. She looks so much like her, and I don't know. All right, we'll have someone said that way.
I remember thinking that Joseph Duncan, he's so smart, and I was like, so even if they know that I'm with him, that maybe he will have an excuse and they'll just leave and they won't think that anything was wrong. You know, that's just my 8-year-old mind. The cop had asked me what my name was, and I had looked at Joseph Duncan, and he said, "You can tell him." He had, you know, said Shasta, and that's when he had, you know, told Joseph Duncan to stand up. And so it was just, after that happened, it was just almost like a sigh of relief. I don't hate him for the things that he's done. I forgive him, actually.
Now we get on to his other crimes. On the 4th of April 1997, 10-year-old Anthony Martinez was playing with his friends outside in Beaumont, California. An unknown man, later identified as Duncan, then came up to them for help in searching for his missing cat. When the boys refused, Duncan grabbed Martinez at knife point and put him in his car. After a 2-week search, Martinez's body was found and partially decomposed in Indio, California. Authorities noted that Martinez had been essayed, and he was found bound with duct tape. 8 years later, in 2005, after many investigations took place, local police officially confirmed Duncan's connection to the case. Duncan admitted to before this, saying, quote-unquote, the crime was revenge against society, again for sending him back to jail for a probation violation. Shasta told investigators that Duncan had told her about his other crimes, including this case. On the 6th of July 1996, the half-sisters disappeared, White being 11 and Cubias being 9, after leaving the Crest Motel in Seattle. Their skeletal remains were found almost 2 years later in 1998 in Washington. Duncan confessed to the 2 girls to death. In 2005, Bruce Duncan, Joseph Duncan's brother, told the newspaper the following. I knew from day one he didn't get called by accident. He was in another state. He could have gone 500 different directions, yet he took Shasta back. He's a human being, and he does have feelings, but he has this problem apparently, that he does not value life. I have no pity for my brother for what he did. I feel sorry for that family. That family, he destroyed it. If he's convicted and it's cut and dried, there's no way around it and there's no question about it. He may be my brother, but there's no excuse. If somebody were to do something like that to me or my family members, I'd want to see him dead. The law is the law. We all live under it. Certain people in the family are in denial. Other people are angry and other people just want to ignore this like it never happened. And I'd like to sit down with him and talk to him without the FBI listening in, because I'm sure he would tell me more than he's going to tell anybody else. Needless to say, anything I'd find out, I would turn over to the authorities. If he's going to tell anybody, it's going to tell me. Now finally we get onto the blog. A little bit of a backstory. The blog was called The Fifth Nail because of this. And this is taken from his official website. It was a blog that was called The Fifth Nail, and it used to be up actually this year. It was still up this year, but then it was taken down. So I got everything all of his entries from the Wayback Machine. Anyways, so why he called the blog post The Fifth Nail is because of this. According to myth, crafted 5 nails for Christ's execution, not 4. The 5th nail was meant to pierce his heart, but they hid the 5th nail from the Roman soldiers. In some stories, they were punished by God for prolonging Christ's suffering, and in others they were rewarded for attempting to protect him. The 5th nail is said to have been a real religious artifact with miraculous powers. Its existence today is somewhat questionable unless you consider it a metaphor. Duncan had a blog called The 5th Nail, where he'd post about his life, almost like a diary. On the post, he posted from the name Joe. I don't know if this was a nickname, but it could just be a way for Duncan to remain anonymous. Anyways, he posted pretty normal things like him playing Delta Force. He had 2 cats named Copper and Rusty. However, in one post, on the 5th of January 2004, talking about, he said the following: I've researched a lot on the topic of why they do what they do, but more importantly, what it is they do. The problem with trying to treat is very similar to trying to treat an addict. You can tell an addict how bad are for them until you are blue in the face. And even if the addict tries to believe what you tell them, there will always be the little rational voice in the back of the head that says, yeah, but no one was really hurt, or they're not really that bad. Well, most of us know, of course, that simply isn't true. The focus is just rationalizing their own behavior. So the mistake therapists commonly make is, instead of digging into the source of that voice, which is in fact a rational voice. Bear with me, I'll explain. We instead berate the offender with how wrong and even monstrous their thinking is, which it is, without giving them credit for having an honest rational thought. That of course merely results in walls going up and progress, if any, being faked. This is how criminals are taught by the system to be manipulators. While anyone can tell you about the manipulative nature of criminals, what most people miss is that a person is really manipulative until after they have been through the system at least once. Instead of denying the truth and telling the offender they should do the same, if we want to help the victims, we have to help the offenders and recognize that they are victims too. They are victims of their own distorted views. In order to help the offenders, we have to recognize that the thinking that keeps them from seeing the hurt they have caused is the same as the thinking that keeps us from seeing the rational behind their often denied belief that did not really hurt anyone. We must see that they are not inherently bad or evil. They are confused and lost, making decisions based on a badly distorted view of reality. And instead of trying to treat them by feeding them our own distorted views of reality, which they can see through as easily as we can see through theirs, we must start being honest with ourselves and in turn with them. That means admitting what is already obvious to the offender. I have lived with and I have communicated with them on a level of trust no therapist could ever fake. I never judged what they told me, so I heard things that were quite shocking on the surface. But because they did not react to what they told me, they went on and told me amazing things, fully revealing the seriousness of their distortions. I learned that most people who prey on children have discovered that adult-child relations are not in and of itself a bad thing. It does not in and of itself cause harm to the What? Assuming no physical injury has been inflicted. You may scoff at this, saying, of course they think that, but that is what makes them sick. But by scoffing, you are only perpetuating the problem by rejecting rationale that is based on solid fact. Let me clear a few things up before I go further. I am not nor have I ever been accused of being one. Also, I was a child, age 16 when I committed my crime. And possibly most significant, because of my appearance and family circumstances, I was so often and by so many different people that up until the time of my offense I actually thought it was normal and that everybody did it. That out of the way, let me say I know a little something about what I'm talking about. I spent 2 years in an experimental treatment program that has since been dismantled because of extreme failures, including people reoffending also in the program, as well as more than one therapist offending while working with the patients. Yes, one of the therapists in the program killed himself after being caught while wedding a young homosexual man while he was a therapist at the program. My own therapist used his position of authority to obtain from wives, girlfriends, and even one offender's mother by promising it would make things easier for the offenders that these women cared about. While it has all of course been documented, good luck trying to pry it out of the state archives. But if you want to try, the program was at Western State Hospital. I was there from 1980 to 1982 in Washington State. The program was shut down within a couple of years after I left the program. The program was extreme to say the least. It was officially shut down because of numerous civil rights violations. Thank you, Lotus Cassidy, wherever you are, for having the courage to fight the machine, even though it cost you 4 years in the prison. But the program, defunct as it was based on highly successful research that shows it was most successfully rehabilitated when they confronted the truth about their crimes and behavior. It was, to say the least, very controversial, and in my opinion, the downfall was from the effect of watering down the very truth that the program was based on, because the truth was a bit harsh for the public palate. The offenders in the program became disillusioned as they were instructed to use modified versions of the truth that would stand public scrutiny. While emphasizing truth and honesty, the therapist began instructing the senior members in the program to refrain from certain terminology and treatment techniques that might be considered offensive. Society must learn to face the truth if it expects offenders to face the truth. We must face our own sickness before we can expect offenders to face theirs. We must learn to recognize and work within the social context of crime. If we took just a fraction of the money we spend on criminal justice and used it instead to study ways to stop supporting criminal behavior, we could bring crime to a virtual standstill. This has been shown in numerous studies, but it was also undermined the foundation of the entire prison industrial complex. Billions of dollars would be lost by those in control and redirected to various less influential organizations like medical research, national healthcare, advanced education, and energy alternatives. Okay, maybe I am just dreaming. Wow. As you'll see in more of these diary entries, the theme of society being against offenders is very prevalent. Like, he talks about this a lot. He also talks about normal family stuff. He says that making things tougher is only making the government money, and that if there was better education in the US, crime would happen more sparingly. On the 9th of January, he goes on to say, I'm at work right now, so I'm keeping this short. After taking a look at my last few posts' blog, I realized sadly that no one is ever going to read this crap. I feel so frustrated knowing that I can see solutions to many problems in our society where most people don't even see the problems, or at least not the real problems. And I'm sure the solutions are correct because they are typically corroborated by experts. And experts are also frustrated because nobody will listen to them either. Society is so full of fear, it just can't see straight, and it is our government propagates the fear. Now this really shows that Duncan thinks he's smarter than others and he genuinely thinks that he has solutions to everything. On the 11th of January, at around 1 a.m., Duncan recalled his prison days while at a party. He described overhearing other inmates talking about drive-by as enlightening. He goes on about dehumanization of victims and says this. The shocking part is that we call it antisocial behavior when inner city black men do it so they can commit crimes, but we call it normal adaptive behavior when law-abiding citizens dehumanize criminals in a history, Jews. But it is all the same psychology trick, so I learned to recognize dehumanizing for what it was and try not to give into it under any circumstance, and have considerably succeeded in most cases. I still tend to dehumanize overweight people and cops, but I'm still working on that. I think if there was one thing I'd fix about man's nature, it would be this ability to see other men as not worthy of one's empathy for any reason. I've often claimed that if I ever had to hurt someone to protect my life or a loved one's life, I would do it with empathy for that person. I doubt I would ever have to, but if I did, I can only hope I would do it with compassion. Well, this is ironic considering what he's done. On the same day later, he says, I have always been a very sensitive person. I suppose that is why I have an especially hard time with people thinking I could intentionally hurt another person. It's not that it bothers me because I know I wouldn't. It bothers me to know that they think I would. In fact, it hurts. Keep in mind this post was made years after he had 3 children. On the 13th of January 2004, he says the following about truth. I have a simple test I use to determine if something is true. If it must be defended, it's probably not true. If it makes me angry, it probably is true. Which is honestly such a dumb take. Anyways, the next day he goes on and on about Christianity. I'm pretty sure that the Bible literally tells you not to do the things he did. On the 15th of January, he talks about his prison life where he allegedly was attacked more than once while in prison. A couple hours later, he gives the quote of the day, which is, you must be the change you wish to see in this world. Well, I guess that doesn't apply to him. On the same day, Duncan reveals that he pretty much lived on the streets in 1997. This was around the time he met Anthony Martinez. Around this time in 2004, he also went to university. On the 16th of January, he said that he had previously got paranoid that someone had installed spyware on his laptop. A psychological evaluation revealed that Duncan suffered from paranoia. Not even an hour later, he posted about laws surrounding once again. Let me take a moment to clarify an important point in my stand against discrimination. I'm not against efforts to raise community awareness about potential threats. I am against laws that encourage and allow arbitrary discrimination against a person because of mistakes they may or may not have made in the past. It is a serious violation of human rights to judge another person based on what they do. Is it? Is it though? They are routinely evicted, denied services, and harassed because of the community notifications. While many states make it against the law to harass a person who is subject to notification, no state has yet to make a law preventing outright discrimination. I will not be so opposed to the registration laws if there are provisions protecting the offender's rights as a citizen, not special rights, just the same rights any person has. Without such protection, the Megan laws are no better than the Jim Crow laws or the Nuremberg laws. I think something he didn't understand was that the Jim Crow and Nuremberg laws were race-based, which is something you can't choose. The Megan laws are laws informing the public about specific registered in the US. Race is something you're born with. Being a It's not. On the 19th of January, he says this. It seems that the dream I had the other night has really taken the wind out of my sails. I feel frustrated, like no matter what I say it will do no good because people won't listen. I was actually blinded by the sacred social conditioning. Few would even consider challenging the source of their own thoughts, and feelings for that matter. People just assume that they are what they think, and have no control over how they feel. But the truth, of course, is that they think what they are, and there is feelings as a result. If that sounded like doublespeak to you, it will to most, then here's a link that might be able to take you where you need to go. Now I clicked on this link and it was a website called, I think, hell.com. Then it redirected me to a Bible website, so I don't know. The link above is actually a good one, and the analogy is fitting to this post. We must all visit there sooner or later. No one is innocent. If you think you've already been there or even close, then you probably already know the secret. Life is an illusion. Love is not. I have found that the most insightful people I meet have invariably had some kind of unusual hardship in their lives. I'm not talking the usual stuff like ailing health, relationship issues, or money problems. I'm talking about the kind of problems that make people feel like they're a stranger in a strange land. A stranger in a strange land feels unloved, insecure, unsure which way to turn, confused, lost, afraid, and most of all lonely. Most of us never experience what I'm talking about because we are experts at clinging to vices that keep us from falling into the abyss of despair. We cling to our jobs, our homes, and our churches. Alternative philanthropy to keep our sanity. Maybe we hold on psychologically to our parents, our lovers, or our children. Of course, there is exercise, money, and food, the good old standbys. And if we are denied these accepted vices, we might turn to violence, the traditional last resorts. Then maybe our peace of mind just come from untraditional comfort of a quiet place where we can hide, physically or in our own minds, or maybe both in some mental institution. These are all spiritual prison cells that keep us locked away from God's love. While God's love is real, it is the only thing that is real. Prison cells are a lie. When you recognize them as lies, they will quickly fade and lose power over you. Then you will experience a new kind of freedom, a freedom that no government can give or take away, true freedom. On the 22nd of January, he says that he created a new blog website for his family called kinkitchen.com. It just brings you to a blog post that I guess was never finished, so yeah. On the 26th of January, he goes on to say, what red-blooded American would stick up for and what Aryan-blooded would stick up for a Jew? Again, not the same thing. If you think there's a difference, then think again. If you're thinking for yourself or letting the media tell you what to think. If you think that you have little control over their behavior, then that is the TV thinking for you, and it is nonsense. Again, yeah, he compares sex offenders. Later on in the blog post, he does say that the Jews obviously suffered more in that era. He realizes he was being ignorant. On the 27th of January, he says, "Where have all the ex-cons gone?" The term is an interesting choice of words. In the past, the term ex-convict was used to describe offenders who were released from prison. The ex obviously implying that the mistake was in the past. The states have unanimously and officially dropped the term ex-convict and replaced it with offender, a present tense term that implies the person was and still is offensive. Now, I kind of understand this, especially if is innocent or offended in a minor way. In that case, then yes, it shouldn't be labeled as obviously that word has a very negative connotation. But if what they did was a major crime, they should be caught as a punishment for their actions. On the 29th of January, he offers his struggles of not being able to find a job or a place to live because of his conviction. He also talks about not being able to find quote-unquote mature and educated women, as he is a level 3 offender. He tries to downplay that by saying that he is simply just an ex-convict. No matter how you look at it, he's still SA. In the same post, he says, "People must realize that it is never okay to discriminate against any class of people for any reason. Even if that class is so obviously offensive. Discrimination is always based on perceived offensiveness of a class. Blacks were portrayed as a threat to decent society, as were the Jews in Germany. The truth is that most do not re-offend." Again, I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but discriminating against races isn't okay because people don't choose their race. Choose to offend. It's not something out of their control. But what he said about most not re-offending only applies to level 1. Only sometimes up higher. Even then, they still have a chance of re-offending. The last part of the same post says, "I suspect crimes are up, especially the violent stranger type. I could never guess why. What would ever make a person behave so angry towards another completely innocent person? Maybe that innocent person somehow represents society, and the violation is some kind of attempt to regain control." He talks about this as if he didn't essay at least 10 young boys at the time. Later that day, he once again compares the registration to Germany. On 17th of February 2004, he says the following, "I need to get more of a social life. I seem to enjoy being around other people more and more, but I constantly struggle with my legal status." I hate that term. To me, it sounds worse than the word that. Okay, but I can't make any friends because who wants to be friends with this? Even some of the friends that I do have prefer that I don't mention it. Like they would be ashamed if anyone found out they were associating with. I'm afraid to hand in my assignments in my statistics class because there's another student with my same last name, who I am sure will recognize my name when it was called out by the instructor while passing back the graded assignments. I cringe in any class when they announce my name, fear of someone recognizing it. Not an unreasonable fear considering my name was headline news for a week just a couple of years ago. Even in public, when I buy something at the store and they look at my name on the credit card or ID when using a check, I feel insecure. I can't believe people can be so blinded to the real effect of the registration requirements. Have you ever noticed that all new criminal laws and policies have very little effect on reducing crime but provide better ways to monitor it? It's because the system feeds on crime. And what wouldn't it want to monitor what it depends on to live? It's really not any more complicated than this. The system needs crime to justify its existence. So the system is evolved in such a way that allows it to monitor and sustain criminal behavior. This isn't rocket science, but it is so obvious and sinister that people just ignore it when they hear it and put the idea out of their mind as nonsense. The system is a living, evolving entity and it knows how to protect itself. Wow, it's called the consequences of your actions. Maybe he should have thought about what he did before he complains. But yeah, he didn't post nearly as much in February as in January. On the 1st of March 2004, he says, I do not cringe when they call my name the way I do when I am around where I live. In fact, when I got to Minneapolis, change planes, and continue home, I immediately started feeling self-conscious. At the gate where we were boarding for the last stop, every time I saw someone looking at me, I thought they recognized me because they might remember me from the police website or newspapers. I don't know how the courts can pretend this law does not penalize. It is a daily torment for me. That last line really reveals his narcissism. He doesn't even think about his victims or how it affects them. He only thinks about how it affects him, how it's a torment for him. What about his victims? The ones who he has caused severe mental trauma to them. No. On the 4th of March, he starts moving into the main floor's apartment. On the 21st of March, he says, so I'm all moved and loving my new place. Copper started peeing again after a week, but at least it has only been in the bedroom where I have a tub on the floor for such behavior. I've started working on my cat zapper that I hope will curb his behavior. He peed today and I caught him in the act and we're acting good. I feel bad about doing it because I'm not sure he understands why I hit him, and now he has been acting afraid of me all day. I really don't like knowing another creature is afraid of me because of something I did. It ties, I'm sure, to not liking the fact that people are afraid of me, even though I know I will never commit another crime. Well, that is quite a contradiction, considering the Groene that would occur that next year. On the 6th of April 2004, he goes on to say, labeling doesn't hurt us anywhere near as much as it hurts the victims, because it does nothing to deter the problem. It only further supports it. We must see this. We must see that as a society we are supporting a cesspool that is breeding violent criminal behavior. The quote-unquote are just acting out what they have learned from us. I know because when I was 16, I was acting out what I had learned. Nothing more. I was and am very fortunate to recognize this. I have seen in them what they themselves did not see. They are products of society. It's an old song, but a true and desperate one. I think intentionally drowned out by certain organizations that use the system for profit and power. Labeling actual as does not hurt anyone. It actually helps people so that they know who to stay away from. But yeah, Duncan constantly mentions society. Society doesn't make you all word kids. On the 3rd of May 2004, he sends the following letter to the police. An open letter to the police. I am an ex-offender who is required by state law to register my place of residence and employment with the city police. The law categorizes me as if that's what I do all the time. But in fact, my first offense was my last, almost 25 years ago, which is not true. I'm an educated and law-abiding citizen, and I feel the registration laws are not enough by themselves. They're not the ones who first used registration laws to track criminals, homosexuals, and eventually Jews. If you doubt me, just type Nuremberg laws into your favorite web search engine. But now the city police department has taken it upon themselves, quoting a source from inside the department, to confirm the address and employment of every offender in the city. I feel this is excessive and amounts to blatant harassment. If you think I've committed a crime, you're welcome to do your job. But if I am obeying the law and giving no rise for concern from anyone, then I don't expect a squad car in my driveway or any visit from the police unless they're explicitly invited or it is an emergency. Don't get me wrong, my words are strong only because I feel my grievance is strong. I appreciate the police and the role you serve in our society, but it is well known that law enforcement tends to overstep its bounds, and I think this is clearly one of those cases. The state has given you no authority to exercise these harassing tactics. People in our community must be continuously reminded. It's not about criminal rights taking precedence over victims' rights. The truth is, if the offenders have no rights, then nobody does. To which the police replied with, I think it's pretty amazing you believe that as a registered your situation is comparable to being a Jew or member of another minority group persecuted by the. While you may be an educated and law-abiding citizen, the fact of the matter is this. If you're required to register you committed a serious crime. Notification laws in our state and most other states around the country are designed to protect the public. We intend to assure our city to comply with state laws. We want to be fair, and we have no intention of harassing anyone. But make no mistake about it, we will be enforcing the law. Our goal is to confirm the addresses of registered 3 times a year to make sure they're in compliance with state law. Our goal is not to be overly inclusive, but we have found many offenders are not responsible about updating their registrations when they move. Just since the first of the year, we have generated 47 reports who have failed to register as required. Some did not register when they moved here, when they moved away, or when they changed jobs. With about 157 registered offenders in the city, hopefully you can see this as a significant problem. Our position is to make sure laws are obeyed, which we do both proactively and reactively. We recognize registered offenders as a group are made up of a wide variety of people who pose varying degrees of risk to the community. As a result, we concentrate our efforts on those judged to be at higher risk. However, we must be responsive to the concerns of community residents, who expect us to be vigilant over this issue. The community expects us to make sure registration laws are complied with, and that's exactly what we are going to do, which is a very valid letter. On the 12th of May, he reports feeling depressed and unmotivated since the community notification. On the 14th of May, he replies to the police reply he got earlier that month with, "I feel sorry for you and most of society. You rationalize your actions exactly the same way that some slave owners did, with questionable science and twisted statistics. People make mistakes and pay for them. I've paid for mine and I know more about why I did what I did than you could ever hope to understand. It would be easier for me to change the color of my skin than to change what I did 25 years ago. And yet that is your only rationale for instigating people's feelings against me. What bothers me is not how these laws affect me directly. It is how they allow our society's real sickness to grow worse, while doing nothing to stop it, and in fact providing motivation for more and more crime. Sooner or later the voice of reason will be heard. If you're interested in the truth, here's a taste." On the 19th of May, he says, "I remember the devastating feeling of being powerless while I was incarcerated. That was the worst feeling, and to this day is the worst feeling I've ever felt. It is the same feeling a victim feels, except it permeates your existence day in and day out, for months and years. That is why I know well and why it is wrong to inflict one's will on another. Crime, in this sense, inflicting your will on another person, is a horrendous tragedy. It is terribly wrong. Sending someone to prison as punishment is wrong, in the exact same sense and for the exact same reason. Revenge, call it punishment if you like, is not the answer. It only propagates the problem and justifies the criminal's behavior. We know prison does not deter criminal behavior at all. Studies show constantly that if you take a group of people who commit any given crime, send them to prison, that compare their recidivism state to a similar group that did not go to prison, the group that did not go to prison always has significantly lower recidivism, which is again perpetuating the idea that he thinks that he is more of a victim than the actual victims. Jail is not quote-unquote revenge, as he calls it. It's consequences for your actions. And before I go further, I would like to ask you guys a question. Do you guys keep a diary? And if so, what kind of stuff do you write in there? Honestly, I'm kind of interested in diaries as a whole, of anyone, not just like criminals, but just regular diaries. It's just interesting to see what people write in there, and I would like to know a little bit about your guys' life. Anyways, on the 7th of June 2004, he says, "Reality is relative. I had 2 strange things happen last night. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up and there was a strange noise coming from a long rope-like apparition suspended in midair. I looked at it and was a little afraid, but kept looking because I did not know what it was. It started to move towards the bathroom, but eventually faded away before it got to the doorway, and I was left just lying there awake in my room. This was very creepy, and if it was another person, I might say I saw a ghost, and who knows, maybe I did. I have no clue what it was or where it came from, whether from my own mind or someplace else. I only know what I saw. Then, when my alarm went off this morning, it was a challenge to figure out what it was. It felt exactly like an alien who had just taken off my body, and I was terribly confused by the meaning of this loud noise. But I rationalized that it must be a signal of some sort indicating that I should take some action, and as long as I took some action, I would know what to do next. No kidding, I actually thought all of this. Bizarre. This is most likely a part of his schizophrenic hallucinations, as previous psychological evaluation determined that Duncan was suffering from schizophrenia. On the 2nd of July 2004, he talks about sociopathy. Sociopaths rock. A coworker yesterday inadvertently accused me of not caring. He did it just as I was leaving to attend a class, so I was thinking about it on the way and came to some startling realizations. Maybe I don't care as I should about how people feel. Usually when I've been accused of not caring in the past, I quickly dismiss the accusation because I know in my heart that I genuinely and deeply care about many people and things. My cats for other people. But what I hadn't realized before is that my habit of easily dismissing another person's feelings as not important is the reason why people think I don't care. But the reason I disregard people's feelings is because I think for the most part they are superficial. For example, if someone I care about says something I think is wrong, rather than agreeing with them or even not saying anything to spare their feelings, I would likely speak up and say I think it's wrong. My view is that if they are offended by my honesty university, then they need to grow up a little. But if I protect their feelings instead of expressing my views, then I'm ultimately hurting more than just their feelings. I'm denying them the truth. I think this is a major problem with our society. At the same time, I have to realize that this is the world I live in, and if no one else sees things my way, then I must take it into account. Not necessarily changing my view, just adapting my behavior a bit to accommodate others' views. What is really interesting about this whole way of looking at things is that psychologists might call me sociopathic because I am rationalizing the fact that I am insensitive to how others feel. Maybe we need more sociopaths then. Obviously, we can see the sociopath. He doesn't care about others' feelings and he thinks he's always right. On the 3rd of July, he speaks about having a dream about scuba diving, but if you remember from earlier, this was the exact day he had 2 young boys at the playground. On the 5th of August 2004, he says the following: Fear. Even though the chances of a child being abducted by a stranger are less than the same child being struck by lightning or bitten by a shark, children today are preoccupied with that fear. Fear is the beginning of isolation, confusion, and hate. All governments know that the biggest threat to their power over the people is unity amongst people. Governments throughout history have sought ways to disrupt that unity. Our government is the master of this technique. It's routine and even expected for a child to turn in their parents if they even suspect they are not conforming. Our children are taught in schools: do not talk to strangers, they are dangerous and want to hurt you. If any adult makes you feel uncomfortable, run away and report them immediately. The police are your friends. What a great way to keep our children from learning new things and thinking for themselves. The last thing the government wants you to do is think. The first is to feel fear. Listen, I've personally been taught that it's better to be safe than sorry. And in any case, adults shouldn't be talking to kids, unless they have a specific reason. But the comments on this post were not the kindest. I'll pop them up on the screen so you guys can see. 10 minutes later, he talks about his hallucinations once again. Duncan shows frustration regarding the police doing checks of sex offenders' addresses. On the 20th of August, police performed a home search warrant on Duncan and took his home computer, digital camera, and camcorders and a lot of regrettable media. He claimed he possessed nothing illegal. The police were most likely looking for pictures of crime. On the 23rd of August, he shares with us an excerpt out of a book he wants to write. Jan had always resented the fact that his parents were separated, more than the fact that his relationship with his father was. Maybe if his father had actually attempted to act out his feelings, things might have been different. But Daddy had never actually committed anything that would constitute an act of it. To Jan, it was just one of those words that people like to use for drawing imaginary lines in their worlds. The lines were necessary so that they could point and say, that is bad. So when the pre-sentence investigator made his report to the judge about Jan's upbringing, he made sure to point out that Jan had come from a normal family and nothing bad had ever really happened to him. The implication, of course, was that Jan was somehow inherently bad and therefore the only one who could be blamed for this heinous crime. Society, the system, and by association the investigator himself could be of no blame, and by default were of course completely innocent. It seemed to Jan as though the real intent of this hearing was to establish the innocence of society by placing the burden of guilt completely on the shoulders of a 15-year-old boy. If Jan is evil, then society is pure and innocent, the proverbial victim, and order is restored. This young man has no excuse for his heinous behavior, but the prosecutor. There was that word again. Jan had looked it up in a tattered old dictionary the night before in his jail cell. It meant grossly wicked or reprehensible, abominable. He had to look up the words grossly reprehensible and abominable too. More words for drawing lines, separating Jan from the good people. The prosecutor continued his contempt of Jan. Your Honor, the people are afraid. We are afraid for our children and we are afraid for our own safety. On the 26th of August, he describes a series of events. Home invasion. My home was invaded by several police officers just last Friday while I was at work. I caught them just after they broke in through a window on my webcam, which sends an alert to my cell phone when it detects motion. My phone alerted me to the break-in while I was waiting for investigator Chits filled out the paperwork after searching my car and taking a disposable waterproof camera. They said they were looking for pictures of 2 boys who were more than a month ago by a man driving a red car and who had a bump on his lip. The man took pictures of the boys, and so they took all my cameras and my home computer to look for pictures. Of course, I'm clean. They might find some pictures of me naked, non-mode photos I used once to make a birthday card from a girlfriend. But that's about it. A commenter under this post said it best. The way he's able to deny the fact that he committed this crime is impressive. It shows how good of a liar he is. The crime he's talking about was committed July 3rd. The day he was supposed to go scuba diving. He went to a lake which was far away from him, so he did drive somewhere. It doesn't even matter, he was charged with the case anyway, although he got it on bail. A theory of this blog is that he used this to create the world he wanted to live in. He didn't want to be a so he used this blog to tell himself, Billy rders, that he was a victim of society and never reoffended. This blog should have gotten much more attention. He could have received help, not from the police, from psychiatrists or psychologists. Instead of that, the police made him turn against society more and more. It's sad to read this blog, knowing things could have ended so much better. Duncan only posted once in September, which was on the 12th of September 2004. It says, I'm home, Sunday afternoon, nothing to do. Everything being undone, nobody to remind me. Life is about giving your choices over to God. Why can others not see the unity of the universe? Why are they so blind in the dungeons? On the 8th of October 2004, he talks about forgiveness, which seems to be a recurring theme as well. Without forgiveness, there's only insanity. I was thinking on the drive to work yesterday that much of the insanity in this world is directly driven by the lack of our willingness or ability to forgive. This is actually a fairly profound and involved concept that would likely take a book to explain, so I'll just leave it to you to figure it out, if you care to, of course. Here's a hint. Forgiveness is letting go of blame. By letting go of blame, we are forced to confront the problem. By not letting go of blame, we evade the problem and it will invariably come back, usually worse than before. This applies to all levels of the human condition, from personal problems where we fail to forgive ourselves, to criminal issues where we fail to take responsibility for crime in our community and country, by blaming and not forgiving the offenders. Forgiveness allows us to see the problem more clearly, and if the forgiveness is genuine, then it also motivates us to do something about the problem via the empathy we feel for those who have forgiven. Obviously, he's only saying this so people forget about what he's done. He didn't post a single post in November. On the 14th of December 2004, he makes a very passive-aggressive post saying, "No knock search warrants." So if you're not a criminal, then you have nothing to complain about. In fact, we need some new crimes so we can weed out the riffraff. This big consuming alcohol a crime again. It didn't work last time because there wasn't enough law enforcement. We can make it work easy this time, especially with a no knock warrant. Lord knows there's plenty of law enforcement these days. While we're at it, let's outlaw homosexuality and other unnatural like premarital sex. Making babies is serious business, and there should be laws against defaming the process. We should also require all women to cover their bodies more in public, like they do in more civilized countries. Maybe even require them to cover their pretty little faces in public, and send them to jail for a day or two if they get snooty about it. No one can stone them, they'll be cruel. The fact is, our constitution as contemporarily interpreted would allow all of these laws, so let's get with the people. You see, it's not law enforcement that's broken, it's our laws themselves. We should make it against the law to possess certain types of pictures that offend us, like CP. And we should make a law against ingesting all harmful addictive substances. Say goodbye to sugar, coffee, and Coca-Cola. Heck, let's make breathing too fast against the law. We've got to conserve the air, you know? It makes you high, and it's not good for you. So who's the criminal now? All those other acts are not hurting anyone, and ethically, it's correct, depending on what you believe in. Unlike young children. Like, is he really suggesting that this crime should be legal? The next day, on the 15th of December, he says, on the plan of Scott Peterson, no matter how you rationalize it, punishment is not a deterrent to criminal behavior, as has been shown by numerous studies. It is plain and simple vengeance, and as such serves no function other than to create more strife. If you think that most of that strife is on the criminal, then you are a victim of your own limited thinking. The strife invariably works its way over and over back into our lives. If we don't stop seeing just the elephant's tail, then we will keep getting trampled under its feet. How do we ever expect our citizens to respect life if we don't respect it as a society? If you think I'm a leftist, bleeding heart, liberal, then what would you have called Jesus, who was publicly executed for a serious crime in his day? I just would like to say, what does he expect to happen to like they? Would they just roam around freely? Jail is there so that the experience consequences. If jail or laws didn't exist, then everyone could now, with no consequences. On the 30th of December, Duncan once again speaks on the topic of victimization. The true nature of victimization. Society is extremely immature yet, and as such, the ability to recognize the true nature of victimization is lost to most. We foolishly believe that people make choices in a vacuum with no regard for the world they live in. The truth is, however, that choices are always made as a direct reflection of the environment the choice is made in. So if you are part of the environment in which a choice is made, then you are just as responsible for that choice as the person making it. Many times, even more responsible. I don't expect everyone to understand this concept. It requires letting go of many reassuring delusions, like the belief in right and wrong. In regards to crimes, you almost always have a choice, especially when it comes to... Yes, I do agree that the household you grew up in influences your state of mind, but ultimately it is your choice to commit that crime. Here, in this post, we can see that he's trying to shift the blame onto his environment and where you grew up in. The next year, on the 3rd of January 2005, he says, "What is a small-minded person? Small-minded people are just what the song says. They think small thoughts." So what is a small thought? A small thought is any thought that fails to consider more than the thinker's own viewpoint. Thus, most small-minded people fail to recognize the malady because they typically are completely oblivious to any view but their own. Even when they are aware that there are other views, they usually see these as opposing their own views and therefore are categorically disregarded as meaningless. I mean, he is literally just describing himself. He only cares about his own opinions and thinks he's always right. Like, this is literally him. On the 25th of January, he says the following about being spied on. "While the police spying on me. My laptop has been acting strange lately. Seems I keep getting reinfected with spyware-type viruses. I finally found a hole and plugged it, but now today I get a rejection notice in my email box for an email I never sent. The rejecting server is located in the same city I was being investigated out of the summer. I have no business with anyone in that city. Could the message be caused by a program that is trying to email our keystroke logs? Why can't the police see how evil what they are doing is? Why do most people think the police serve a useful function? Why can't people realize that George Orwell was a prophet? Now, this is a prime example of Duncan's paranoia and hatred towards cops. On the 26th of January, he gives a link to another blog named Panda Conspiracy, which is a whole other rabbit hole that I would love to go down in a separate video if you guys want to see that. So let me know if you do want to see that in the comments, because it seems very interesting. On the 30th of January, he types out a song by REM released in 1991 named Losing My Religion, which could mean that Duncan feels so angry that he's losing it on this particular day. I'll read out some lyrics for you guys. That's me in the corner, that's me in the spotlight, losing my religion, trying to keep up with you. And I don't know if I can do it. Oh no, I've said too much. I haven't said enough. I thought that I heard you laughing. I thought that I heard you sing. I think I thought I saw you try. On the 2nd of February 2005, he speaks about this hysteria, where he says the following. Center, I committed a crime when I was very young. I was sentenced to a program for adults with half the men in my treatment groups having fantasized about me. After 2 years, I was a senior member when the said therapist paid a surprise visit to my mother's house and propositioned her saying it would help your son in the program if you cooperate with me. When she told me about it, I quit the program and was sent to prison, but according to at least one official report that was written before I was sentenced, because of his appearance and age, he would likely be abused by other inmates if sent to prison. True story. I thought I would only do a few years and get out, not having to be around such evil people who represent the system. But because of the quote-unquote hysteria, I ended up spending over 12 more years in prison before finally being awarded parole. All my psych reports say I'm low risk. I was just a kid acting on confusion over my own, and studies show conclusively that my type of offense is rarely repeated. And yet almost 30 years later, while I have no parole, nor have I ever committed a new crime, the police insist on knocking on my door several times a year, and sometimes in the wee hours, as a matter of Magnus Genius, to check that I still live here. I have no privacy at all. Anyone in the state, country, even world can find out where I live, what I look like, and what I did when I was a kid just by typing my name on any web browser. This does not only hurt me. If that was all, I could accept it because what I did was bad. But it hurts my mother, my family, my friends, and even my neighbors who think I'm a great guy. Until they find out, and they're afraid of me. It hurts society because it scares people into thinking every strange person is a suspect, and at the same time deceives them into thinking the government can make them safe by telling them about the really bad ones. Even the Fargo police website admits few convicted ever reoffend. Majority of convictions are first-time convictions. Most not reoffend after being caught. That is a stone-cold fact that no one can deny in the face of the evidence, and yet people refuse to look at the direct implications, the truth. So these laws only harass convicted and are an inherent waste of effort. In fact, even more detrimental to the safety of our society since they create a classic victim mentality. The victim's sense of false security allows unconvicted offenders to put themselves in a position to then the victim's fear lets the offender get away with it for longer. It seriously hampers any attempts on the offender's part to date women. It makes it difficult for them to even have good friends. So some of the more ignorant people in the world will read this and think they deserve it. I call these people ignorant because they don't see the hurt they are causing. More victims, just because they're afraid to admit their own secret desires. I mean, this is really insane, like how well he can lie and play as a victim, saying that he didn't commit a new crime for 30 years, which is simply not true, i.e. the playground. On the 8th of February, Duncan poses a theoretical on nirvana. Is nirvana an unrealistic fantasy? Do humans truly have the potential to live in utter peace, no crime, no war, no poverty? Or is the concept of nirvana a mere distorted manifestation of basic human social instinct to love and nurture? Instincts that are destined to be continuously countered by other human instincts to mistrust and destroy. This is what I've been pondering lately, thanks to a carefully inserted comment from a friend of mine about my idea of the perfect world. I've always believed it was possible, but now questions have been raised that it must be considered. Well, was it peaceful when those kids? On the 9th of February, Duncan asks the Fargo police chief a question and he gets a reply. Question. Did the police have the right to knock on people's doors to make sure they are obeying the law, even if they have no reason to suspect they are not? Answer. Police Chief Magnus. No, and we don't do this. Then on the 14th of February, he asks yet another question and he gets another reply. Question. I'm surprised you did not recognize my first question as bait. So now I must ask, if the police cannot knock on people's doors to make sure they are complying with the law, then what do you call the quarterly checks, even for offenders not on any type of supervision done with the sentences? Also, do you check all offenders or just level 3s? Answer. Police Chief Magnus. Are you too clever for me? I suspect you know this, but I'll answer your question in order to inform other readers. Are required by law to register their addresses and employment information with the local law enforcement agency where they live. If offenders move or change jobs, they are required to notify the authorities of their new information. Law enforcement personnel not only have the right, but in my judgment, they have an obligation to assure comply with the law. Officers do this by periodically verifying that offenders are residing at the address they have registered at. This not only protects the public in the area, who have a right to know, but can protect the offender as well. In Falco, we verify addresses of all offenders and give extra attention to those offenders who we believe may pose the greatest risk to community safety. On the 17th of February, he talks about criminals being victims too. Once again, criminals are victims too. As long as we keep attacking the symptoms of social disease, the so-called offenders, then our problems will keep getting worse. Someday, soon I hope, society will be forced to wake up and recognize how it propagates its own misery by denying the truth that criminals are victims too. They are not. You choose to commit the crime. The actual victim doesn't choose to have that crime done to them. On the 20th of February, he again talks about educating. Yes, I know a lot about from all three sides, the victims, the offenders, and the systems. I'm not saying that offenders do their thing. I have no problem with taking direct measures to stop people from hurting people. But I think it is more effective to take direct measures to stop people from wanting to hurt people. We should offer free offender counseling and even amnesty for certain types of offenses if the offender agrees to treatment before they are caught. That would be a very practical and effective way to reduce crimes dramatically. I doubt it will ever happen though, because our society loves the excitement that's bring it to our living rooms through the media, and we would be lost without someone to point our figures at. It's a known sociological concept, so before you call me off the wall, study up a bit. I mean, I'm all for educating criminals so they are not as prevalent, but I don't think anyone has felt excited hearing about it. Most people feel disgusted. Now we go into March 2005. Just keep in mind that this is the month that Duncan was charged with a crime that happened in 2004. On the 1st of March, he acknowledges his neighbor. He says, "What friends are for?" A friend of mine pointed out that I spend too much time dwelling on my past. Since 25 years ago. And she offered this blog as evidence. She said I was also very negative. Likewise, evidence in this blog. Wow, she is obviously correct, and it bothers me that I hadn't seen this before. Not that I'm really negative inside, I'm really not. I love my life and I love the world, and I believe genuinely that God does not make mistakes, so there is nothing wrong about the way things are. I know from ongoing personal experience that my struggle to know the truth is God's gift to me. His gift can be acknowledged and recognized, but it can never be lost or possessed. So I truly am a happy person on a level where being happy really counts. So thank you, pretty neighbor girl, for pointing out the sad impression that I've been giving and allowing me the opportunity to amend my ways. Again, he says his last event was 25 years ago, when it was really last year. He says, quote unquote, "I love the world," but complains about society every single post. On the 21st of March, Duncan quotes himself from 1987 in jail. "When you can see the strengths that control your life, you tend to wonder." Jet, McNeil Island State, Net and Sherry, 1987. On the 1st of April 2005, he gets offender checked by a police officer. Visit from Office Friendly. A friendly officer from the city police department just stopped by to do the quarter offender check. I did not bother asking his name. Each time they seemed to add more and more to the check. This time they wanted ID and phone number. He also wrote down additional comments on the form that he was filling out that I did not see. Later that day, a reporter asked him about the charges against him in Baker County, which are the charges. On the 15th of April, he says, "So I've been accused of a little boy. Those close to me, no, I didn't do it, of course. How could I? I'm not even but I'm not a psychopath either. I feel the full force and pain of everyone I have ever hurt. But that doesn't stop me from doing what I need to do. Ultimately, my feelings don't matter. I learned that in prison. I have to carry out my orders, or a lot worse than just me dying could happen." Again, denying what he's done. He is previously, in his teen years, admitted to outwitting at least 13 underage boys. On the 24th of April, Duncan posts about battling demons, wrestling with demons. Yes, I'm still alive. I honestly wish not. I just don't know how to myself so it makes sense. Nothing makes sense to me right now. Last night I realized I was scared and alone. Being scared doesn't bother me as much as being alone. But it is a fate that I probably chose sometime before I was ever born, because I've been making the decision to fight my battles alone since I was a small child. The current battle is of epic proportions. I do not make this claim idly either. It is a battle between me and my demons. Only two people in the world have a clue as to the power and nature of my demons beside me, and they will probably never read this. But just the same, these demons are stronger than even I gave them credit for, and now they are taking my best blows, not even staggering. I'm afraid, very afraid. If they weren't, then a lot of people would be badly hurt, and they've had their way before, so I don't know what to do. So I know what they can do. I've been praying a lot and asking God for help. I've asked Him to step in and intercede directly, because I see no other way at this point that I can win. If you're reading this and you believe in God, please pray for God to help me defeat my demons. God has shown me the right choice, but my demons have been tied to a spit, and the fire has already been lit. I don't know if the right choice is even an option anymore. This post is most likely referencing the semi-planned Groene next month. He says he's fighting demons that are presumably telling him to Now we get on to May 2005, which is the month in which the Groene occurred. He only posted 2 posts this month, both of which were for the. However, he speaks about his demons a lot in the following 2 posts. On the 11th of May 2005, he says, "The demons have taken over. Thanks for the comments. As far as letting God take care of the demons, too late. They've locked up the Happy Joe person in the same dungeon that Happy Joe kept them in for so many years. Now they are loose and I'm very afraid. From now on, I may refer to Happy Joe as Jet, me, and the demons as the boogeyman. If you are familiar with me or even my Fifth Nail website, then you will understand their names. I have been asking God to help defeat the demons. In fact, last night, I was on my knees begging him, crying out loud to him to help me. He didn't answer again. The problem is I'm losing my religion. I don't accept anything at face value, not even my own thoughts. So when I start having religious convictions, I question the source. In my current situation, I figure I am under a lot of stress, and there are perfectly natural human mechanisms that account for all religious experiences. Demons, if that's what they/it are/is, I use the term for mere convenience, have convinced me that I should at least question my religious beliefs. This makes sense, otherwise I would believe anything. And that is how they got the key to the dungeon and trapped me inside. To be more specific, I'm scared, alone, and confused, and my reaction is to strike out towards the perceived source of my misery, society. My intent is to harm society as much as I can, then die. As for the Happy Joe, Jet, well, it was just a dream. The boogeyman was alive and happy long before Happy Joe. I was in prison for over 18 years, since the age of 17. As an adult, all I knew was the oppression of incarceration. All those years, I dreamed of getting out and getting even. Instead, I got out and got even, but did not get caught. So I got even again, and again did not get caught. So I figured, well, I got even twice. Actually more, but that's here and there. Even if I'm the only one, who knows? So what now? Well, that was when the Happy Joe's dream started. I met a bunch of really great people, the kind of people I didn't even know existed. But here they were, bunches of them. My neighbors, my landlords, my professors, my co-workers, and they were all good people who were willing to give me a chance despite my past. They were willing to accept me and be my friend, something that was new for me, having been betrayed by many friends and even my own family. So I tried to make it work, but the problem was those demons, the ones who got even for me. They kept reminding me that if my new friends knew about them and what I had done to even them so much for their friendship. So Happy Joe was just dreaming, or pretending to be happy. Duncan wants to take revenge on society for locking him up by an innocent family. In this post, he's giving up on fighting his demons. Then on the 13th of May 2005, just 3 days before the Groene murders, he makes his final post on this blog site, which is the following. Still confused. My blog entries lately are erratic and full of a lot of BS. For that I apologize. I'm just trying to put down what is in my head, regardless. As far as taking people with me, well, I don't know if that is right or wrong. In fact, I don't know much anymore what right and wrong even is. My view is either everything is right in some regard or everything is wrong in some other regard. The question, one I'm struggling with at this point is, does it matter? Does anything matter? My mother is crying right now because her son is in trouble again. She tried to raise a good son, and she knows her son has a good heart, so why does he do these things? She's probably more hurt and confused than me. Does it matter? It hurts me to know these things, but does it matter? 100 years from now, all my mother's pain will be gone, and other mothers will cry for their sons. A million years from now, there probably won't be any mothers, at least not like we know. I have feelings. In fact, I think I must be more sensitive than most people because I seem to feel more than they do. At least more than they openly express. I feel for the starving children and families in the world. Others say, oh, that's too bad, but I can't do anything, so. I wish I could be more honest about my feelings, but those demons made sure I'd never be able to do that. I might not know if it matters, but just in case, I'm working on an encrypted journal that is hundreds of times more frank than this blog could ever be. That's why I keep it encrypted. I figure in 50 years or more we will have the technology to easily crack the encryption, currently very uncrackable, PGP. And then the world will know who I really was, and what I really did, and what I really thought. Also, maybe then they will understand that despite my actions, I'm not a bad person. I just have a disease contracted from society, and it hurts a lot. I hope to complete this journal before I die, soon, or turn myself in. I still might do that, but I think it is the right thing. But of course I'm not sure. Speak of being sure, I wish I could be sure about my thoughts, but right now, the only thing I'm sure about is that I'm sure about nothing. It is not a good position to be in considering my circumstances, being a felony fugitive and all. And that was the last post on that website. Now there is kind of a continuation of the Fifth Nail blog on a different website, which is still up by the way. It's named the Fifth Nail Exposed Introductions. It's also quite long and there's a lot of stuff on it, so please let me know if you want me to make a video on that as well, because I think it's very interesting and it could be like sort of a part 2 of this video. So if you guys are interested in that, please let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something new. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe and comment down below anything you might want to say. Thank you for watching and have a great day.